All right, if you have been following this channel for any length of time, you already know what I am about to say, because we talk about this constantly, and for good reason. When it comes to Social Security, the single area where people consistently leave the most money on the table, make the most avoidable mistakes, and walk away with far less than they are legally entitled to, is spouse benefits. Spouse benefits. Divorced spouse benefits. Independently entitled divorced spouse benefits, surviving spouse benefits, child and care benefits, which is really just another form of spouse benefits when you break it down. There are so many variations, so many nuances, and so many places where people either get wrong information or simply never get any information at all. So today we are going to go through all of it. And I want to see how many of you watching right now have actually been missing money, benefits that are sitting there with your name on them, uncollected, because nobody ever walked you through this properly. We do this kind of dedicated spouse benefit deep dive periodically on the channel because it genuinely matters. And every time we do it, we hear from people who discover they have been leaving hundreds of dollars a month on the table for years. We cover everything else on this channel too. Retirement benefits, disability benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, all of it. But today, we are focusing specifically on spouse benefits and all the places where things go sideways for people. And for those of you who are watching this live on Facebook, TikTok, or YouTube, welcome, and make sure you are typing your questions into the chat as we go. I am going to spend about 10 minutes or so walking through the fundamentals of spouse benefits, and then I am opening it up for live Q&A. Because here is what regular viewers already know. With Social Security, it is always the exceptions that matter most. The exceptions, the exceptions, the exceptions. We will get into all of those. Let us go. Current spouse benefits, the basics and where people go wrong. So, Social Security spouse benefits. First thing to understand is that there are two very different categories here: current spouse benefits and divorced spouse benefits. The rules overlap in some areas and diverge significantly in others. Let us start with current spouse benefits. To qualify for benefits on your current spouse's Social Security record, you need to meet a few specific requirements. Number one, you have to be at least 62 years old. Number two, you have to file for benefits on your own record first. Now, if you are not actually eligible for benefits on your own record, that is okay. The filing still has to happen, so Social Security can officially confirm your ineligibility. Think of it as a procedural step that has to be documented. And number three, your current spouse has to already be collecting their own Social Security benefits, typically because they are at least 62 or because they are receiving disability benefits. Now, here is the big one. This is the one that catches people off guard constantly, and I want you to really absorb this. The comparison that determines whether you qualify for a spouse benefit is not based on what your monthly check looks like right now. It is based on your full benefit amount at your full retirement age, what Social Security calls your PIA, your primary insurance amount. That is the amount you would have received if you had claimed at exactly your full retirement age with no early reductions and no delayed retirement credits. For anyone born after 1960, your full retirement age is 67. Your PIA has to be less than half of your spouse's PIA. Not half of their current check, half of what they would have received at their own full retirement age. And I cannot tell you how many people get this comparison completely wrong. They are sitting at the kitchen table, they look at their monthly deposit, they look at their spouse's monthly deposit, they do the quick math in their head, and they conclude, nope, doesn't work for me. But they are looking at the wrong numbers entirely. Here is why that is such a common mistake. Your current benefit might be reduced because you claimed early. Your spouse's current benefit might be higher than their PIA because they waited past full retirement age and earned delayed retirement credits. On top of that, Medicare premiums might be coming out of one or both checks. Federal taxes might be withheld. So the dollar amount hitting your bank account on the first of the month is not the right number to be comparing. It is just not. So how do you find the right number? The simplest way is to log in to your My Social Security account at SSA.gov. I recommend everyone do this regardless, not just for this reason, but because having an active account adds a layer of security protection to your record that makes it much harder for someone to fraudulently access your information from overseas and cause problems on your account. When you log in, you can generally see what your benefit amount at full retirement age would be. If for some reason it is not displayed clearly, both you and your spouse can simply call Social Security directly and ask, "What is my PIA?" They will tell you. Then you compare the two numbers and you will know exactly where you stand. Divorced spouse benefits. What your ex doesn't know won't hurt them. Okay, let us move on to divorced spouse benefits because there is a lot of confusion here. And honestly, a lot of unnecessary emotional resistance too, which I will address in a minute. The basic eligibility framework for divorced spouse benefits is similar to current spouse benefits in several important ways. Your PIA still has to be less than half of your ex-spouse's PIA. You still need to be at least 62, and your ex-spouse needs to be at least 62 or already receiving their own Social Security benefits. But here is the part that trips people up emotionally far more than it should. I hear this all the time. People say, "I don't want to take money away from my ex. They got remarried. They have kids. I don't want to create problems for their family." And I understand where that instinct comes from. I genuinely do. But here is the reality. Your divorced spouse benefit does not reduce your ex's benefit by a single dollar. It does not affect their new spouse's benefits. It does not affect any children who may be receiving benefits on that record. Not $1 is touched. Zero. The benefit you would receive comes out of the Social Security Trust Fund, a pool of money your ex contributed to over their working years, and your claim on it has absolutely no impact on what anyone else receives from that same record. Now, the other version of this I hear, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes I win this conversation and sometimes I do not, is people who say, "Look, it was a bad marriage. It was an ugly divorce. I do not want anything that is connected to that person." And I respect that. I do. But what I always point out is that the money is not coming from that person directly. It is sitting in the Social Security Trust Fund, completely separate from them. It is yours if you meet the eligibility requirements. It is legally yours. But sometimes people look me straight in the eyes, or the camera in this case, and they say, "I hear you, Ed. I understand it is in the trust fund, but it still has that person's fingerprints on it, and I want nothing to do with it." And that is their right. Every once in a while, I can talk someone through it, and they go ahead and file. But sometimes people decide that an extra $500 or $600 a month is not worth it to them emotionally, and you know what? I respect that too. What you are going to do, you are going to do. I just want to make sure the decision is informed. Now, what if you do not know your ex-spouse's Social Security number? What if you have lost touch with them entirely and have no idea whether they are even receiving benefits yet? Do not let that stop you. Seriously, do not walk away from potential benefits just because you do not have that information on hand. Call Social Security, tell them you believe you may be eligible for divorced spouse benefits, give them your ex-spouse's name, approximate date of birth, and the state where they were born. And a Social Security employee can locate the record. In all my years working at the Social Security Administration, I never once failed to locate a record using that basic information. We once tracked down a John Jones somewhere in North Texas, born sometime in the 1960s. If we can find that record, we can find your ex. If for some reason the first person you speak with cannot locate it, just call back and try again with a different employee. The 10-year marriage requirement and the one exception nobody knows about. For divorced spouse benefits, you have to have been married to that person for at least 10 years. This is one of the firmest rules in this entire area. It applies to both divorced spouse benefits and divorced survivor benefits. There are essentially no exceptions. Well, almost no exceptions. There is one, and most people have never heard of it, including a lot of Social Security employees. Here is the scenario. Let us say you were married to someone for 5 years, then you got divorced. And yes, this happens. Apparently about 5% of people do this. You remarried the same person. If you were married to that same person a first time for 5 years and a second time for 5 years, Social Security can add those two periods together and treat them as a single 10-year marriage. You reach the threshold. You are eligible. But there is a timing condition attached to this. The remarriage has to have happened by the end of the calendar year following the divorce. So let us say today is June of 2026 and you get divorced. For Social Security to be able to combine your two marriage periods, you would need to have remarried that same person by December 31st of 2027. If you did, those two stretches of marriage can be combined into one for purposes of meeting the 10-year requirement. I will be upfront with you. Most of the people you encounter at a Social Security field office will not know this rule. If you go in and try to claim benefits under this circumstance, there is probably a 99% chance the person at the front window will tell you it does not work that way. Do not take that as the final answer. Ask to speak with a Title II technical expert. They will look it up in the policy reference material, the POMS, and they will confirm that it is real. You will get your money, but you have to be persistent enough to get past the first no. The independently entitled divorced spouse benefit, one of the biggest sources of missed money. Now, I want to talk about what is called the independently entitled divorced spouse benefit, or IEDSP for short, because this is one of the most significant sources of lost benefits that we encounter on this channel. People miss months and sometimes years of payments because of a misunderstanding of this rule. Here is the critical distinction. When we talked about current spouse benefits, one of the requirements is that your spouse has to be actively receiving their own Social Security benefits. But with the independently entitled divorced spouse benefit, your ex does not have to be receiving benefits yet. As long as your ex is at least 62 years old and you have been divorced from them for at least 2 years, you can potentially collect benefits on their record, even if they have not filed for their own benefits yet. Maybe they are waiting until full retirement age. Maybe they are holding out until 70 to maximize their delayed credits. Maybe they are just being stubborn. It genuinely does not matter. As long as they are at least 62 and you have been divorced for 2 years, you may qualify. Now, and this is important, the 2-year divorced requirement is specific to this independently entitled situation. People often misapply it. If your ex is already receiving their own Social Security benefits, the 2-year divorce requirement does not apply at all. The 2-year clock only matters when your ex has not yet claimed. Do not mix these two scenarios up. A lot of people do, and it costs them. I want to be honest with you. We have sent a significant number of people down to their local Social Security offices over the past few years specifically to claim the independently entitled divorced spouse benefit. And for a while, way too many of them were being turned away by front window employees who told them it was not a valid type of claim. Those people would come back to us the next day frustrated, saying the SSA employee told them their ex had to be receiving benefits first. We would provide the exact POMS reference. They would go back in, request a Title II expert, and they would walk out with their claim filed and money on the way. To be fair, it does seem like the SSA has improved training on this specific issue in recent years. But with staff cuts being what they are, not every office is fully up to speed. If you ever run into that wall, just be patient, be polite, and ask for a Title II technical expert. That is the key phrase. Those are the people who know the policy at the depth required to handle a claim like this. Survivor benefits. Different rules, different calculations. Let us talk about survivor benefits now, because the rules here are different enough from regular spouse benefits that they deserve their own clear explanation. For a divorced spouse survivor benefit, meaning your ex passed away and you were divorced from them, the 10-year marriage requirement still applies, the same as with the regular divorced spouse benefit. The same limited exception applies for people who married the same person twice. But if you were still married to the person when they died, if you were their current legal spouse at the time of their passing, the 10-year requirement does not apply. Instead, you just need to have been married to the person for at least 9 months. That is a much lower threshold. And even that 9-month requirement has exceptions. If the death was accidental, or if it was connected to active military service, the 9-month requirement can be waived entirely. Now, here is where we have helped people recover what I genuinely believe adds up to hundreds of millions of dollars in missed benefits over the years. And it comes from this specific misunderstanding. People will say to me, "Ed, I was married to someone years ago. Back when I was in my 20s or 30s, we were married for over 10 years, or I was still married to them when they passed. But then I got remarried. And I read somewhere that if you remarried, you cannot receive survivor benefits on a previous spouse's record. So I never applied." And here is where the misunderstanding lives. Remarriage does cut off your access to survivor benefits, but only if you are still in that subsequent marriage. If you remarried and you are still married to that person right now, then yes, you generally cannot also collect on a previous spouse's record. But if that later marriage ended through divorce, through death, through annulment, for any reason, and you are now single again, you are what I call a free agent. You can look back at every qualifying marriage in your history and file a claim based on the one that benefits you the most. Here is exactly how that works in practice. You walk into a Social Security office and you are filing a claim. They ask you, "How many times have you been married?" You say, 3 times. They follow up with the key qualifying question. Were any of those marriages at least 10 years long, or were you married to the person when they passed away? You say, "Yes, actually, all 3 of them ended in death, and all 3 were at least 10 years. Now all 3 records are on the table. The Social Security employee then goes through each one. Name, date of birth, place of birth. That is all you need for each person. Same as before, they can locate the records. And they will look at what benefit you would be entitled to from each one. Then they will say something like, "Okay, person number 2 gives you the highest benefit. Let us go ahead and file your survivor benefit claim on that record." And this is right around the point where things start getting interesting, and where a lot of people make another critical mistake that costs them money. But we will get into that as soon as we open up the Q&A. So keep your questions coming in the chat. There is a lot more ground to cover, and I want to make sure we get to all of it.